Welcome to this special edition of the Aussie Game podcast, where we're going to preview the A-League men's season. It's going to be a massive season, as they all are. Plenty riding on it, plenty of storylines heading into it. As with most seasons, Mopper, we do have a lot of high turnover from clubs, plenty of clubs that are trying to improve their position from last season. Of course, the big storyline heading into this A-League season is that we're going to be one team short in terms of what we had last season with Western United in hibernation. I mentioned this on the podcast a few weeks ago. I think in a funny way that actually makes our league stronger, because a lot of that top line talent from Western United has ended up at other clubs. So it's good to see that we've retained a lot of those players and they've gone to these other clubs. And while we have lost some big names as well, I think the league is in a position where it's exciting, and I think we need to just tell those stories as we head into the season.
Yeah, I think it's very exciting. Again, it's as you said, a lot of players did leave, but we've got a lot of young players coming through again. You would have seen a lot of our under-20s are heavily represented in the clubs that we'll preview. So the future is going to be bright. There are going to be more opportunities, of course, and I think the A-League look forward to some bigger crowds and some better marketing to hopefully lift the profiles. And I think you'll see a really good new generation come through. We've seen a lot of talent from all ages in those junior Socceroos and Joeys. And I think you've seen some stalwarts return, and there's some great depth as well with some of the clubs. And we've also got, obviously, Melbourne City and Macarthur representing us in the Champions League and Champions League 2, which is obviously an offset to the A-League's preview that we're doing tonight.
Yeah, I think as you said, it's probably a matter of a moment in time where the A-League clubs are really benefiting from the work that they've done in setting up academies, and you can really see almost on a weekly basis now that these players who have been at the academy since the start, and they've kind of come all the way through, and I think we're really reaping the benefits of that. So we are a selling league. We are going to lose our top talent at the end of each season. That's just a reality. It's how we replace that talent. And my preference would always be that we fill it from the bottom up in terms of young talent coming through, rather than bringing in foreigners that will only add so much to the league. So I think we're going to see a fair bit of that again this season. And it's probably just a matter of which of those young players are going to take their chances and show what they're worth, and potentially at the end of this current season, they can be the Sapsfords and the Bodiches and the Segiciches that get their moves overseas.
Absolutely. And we just want to send a heartwarming message to the Western United fans that supported their club. We hopefully will see them back in the next 12 months. But for the other 1.453 million that went through the gates of the A-League, hopefully we can lift off this year and get some stronger crowds. And we've seen an average crowd of 8,866, with Auckland topping the crowd numbers, 235,000 in their first year, with an average crowd of 18,000. So we're looking forward to new exciting times and looking out for the potentials, but also to see who can rise through the A-League this year and set the standard.
I think, stats only say part of the message, but to see our crowds lift, be great to crack that five-figure mark, getting them consistently over 10,000, and for the viewership to continue to go up. I think that would be a positive message for the league going forward. So let's hope that we can do that. All right, kicking us off for this A-League Mets review is Adelaide United. We're going in alphabetical order. Let's have a look back at last season, mate. They finished sixth. They were knocked out by Western United in round one. Their overall record for the season was 10 wins, 8 draws, and 8 losses. Just a couple of stats for you, mate. They had the highest XG in the league, and they were equal third for most goals scored. So all-out attack for Calviet's men. They had the highest touches in the opposition box by a very long way, actually. But they were the only team in the top 8 with a negative goal difference, and they conceded the second most goals in the league, only behind last place Perth. So playing a bit of that Ange ball potentially, made they all out attack, but we won't worry about the defence. as long as we score more than them. There were definitely some games there, some high scoring draws and high scoring wins and losses. So it certainly was the model that Carl Viet approached it with, and he has plenty of exciting talent at his disposals. When I think about their fullbacks in particular, with Piraeus down one side and Kidder down the other, they definitely had the attack first mindset. So probably left the centre backs a bit short at times, but it certainly was the tail of their season. Scored plenty, but conceded plenty as well.
Yeah, they're the highest representative of our under 20s Socceroos that just obviously seen get knocked out in the under 20s World Cup. So a very youthful side, but we also have seen a change at the top with Calvert being replaced as a coach by Ayrton Androli, who has been brought in at Adelaide United, and he was their youth and assistant coach in 2020. So he knows a lot of these younger players, but big changes at the top. Calvert obviously going to the Joeys, and they've got their stalwart back though, Craig Goodwin, which is a massive in for me, but a very young side. Do you want to go through each of their ins and outs?
Yeah, I'll just pick out a few. I want to just also say that the way that Carl Viet's time ended at Adelaide United was very sad to see. We did see, a bit of a power struggle toward the end of last season. So hopefully the players that remain can get on board with Andrioli and can all go in the right direction. Very youthful side still, as you said, but one of their big ins is obviously Craig Goodwin coming back from his time in Saudi. Julian Quetel, he returns on loan from FC Eindhoven. So he was an Adelaide United player, just signed but loaned straight away over to Eindhoven. And then a few scholarship contracts have come through. Joshua Smith, the keeper, and Selmo Di Marias, Juan Muniz has come in as well. And then they picked up a couple from Western United as well. So Jake Najowski and Israel Mongo. So yeah, definitely Craig Goodwin's the big story out of that one. And when we look at their outs, they've lost plenty of experience, and they're obviously banking on their youth outside of Goodwin, obviously, and a few other of their imports to fill those gaps. So Isaias was a big miss. He didn't play a lot, but I imagine he was a big influence around the team. Javi Lopez the same. So they both retired last season. Ryan Tunnicliffe and Josh Cavallo, they left as well as Jordan Elsey. James Delianov, he's ended up at the Newcastle Jets. Zach Clough, I think he's gone to Malaysia. Stefan Mork in Vietnam. And Archie Goodwin, over recent months, has ended up in Charlotte in the MLS. So, yeah, as we'll probably go through with most clubs, high changeover, but it's probably particularly all that experience that they've lost. Adelaide United, that's probably a little bit concerning for their fans. So, yeah, when we look at just about all of those outs, probably Archie Goodwin aside, yeah, plenty of experience lost.
Yes, they are a very well supported club, though, with the fourth highest average crowd of 10,575, as they've seen 137,478 go through the gates. But this is a side that'll be on the rise, and I think will get a lot of benefit out of their time. But I think the year after will be their year as these young players obviously grow within the game. But you'll see some definitely exciting talent. We've got a few players to watch. Obviously, the star. Craig Goodwin returns, he'll provide much width and attack and probably leadership and guidance. We've also got Luka Jovanovic, who obviously played for the under-20s striker. He starts for the under-20s. He's an exciting prospect. Yayo Dukale, Kikianis, the centre back of the Socceroos 20s, Medina, Johnny Yole, he's obviously with the under 20s, Alagic, Taladira on the left side of the Socceroos 20s. So, as I said, and Tadu as well. So, there's a lot of players young there to watch and a very exciting brand of football they probably still will play. Their first 5 games are Sydney FC, a tough start, Macarthur, Auckland, probably the toughest start in the A-League, this one, and Wanderers and Melbourne City. So, they're going to be tested right from the minute. Your prediction, Chief, of where Adelaide will land this season on the A-League table?
Yeah, I've got them as seventh, and I think it's really going to depend on how a lot of these younger players settle and how quickly they can get used to it. You mentioned a lot of those players who are playing in the under 20s and at the World Cup. They'll have plenty of experience from that tournament and seeing if they can bring that back. And it's probably just how quickly that they can kind of kick on. Kikiana's had a good partnership with Bart Vriens last season. We saw Johnny Yole play a fair bit. Ethan Alagich, another player that we're going to keep an eye out for. He's a very talented, obviously the son of Richie Alagich, but very talented midfielder in there. And then there's some really exciting talent, and in terms of Anlani Tatu, Yaya Dakuli has big raps on him as well, Panache Madania. So yeah, it's probably just how quickly these young players can settle and how quickly they have actually picked up some good results in the preseason as well. You can only take so much out of the preseason, but yeah, it just probably depends how they go. They tend to kind of start well, Adelaide, and then drop off. So if they could start well, they and build on that youthful exuberance and then just kind of kick on. But as you said, real real tough first 5 games. But if they can get through that and they're still in quite a decent position, no doubt that those easier fixtures, as we might label them, mate, will be coming. But yeah, I've got them seventh, only just missing the finals, but I think they'll be pretty close around that mark.
Yeah,
What about you?
I've got them for 8th. I just think young and exciting, but they'll just get outshone by some of the more experienced team and find it a bit difficult away from home. So, but definitely an emerging side, and Adelaide fans, don't be too disappointed. I think the future is very bright. Our next club we'd like to preview is Auckland FC, the powerhouse last season, coming first in the Premiership, but knocked out by Melbourne Victory in the semi-finals. Their record was 15 wins, 8 draws, and only 3 losses. They started last season with 6 straight wins, including 2 over Wellington in the derby. They had the most clean sheets with 12, but conceded the most fouls per match. What's changed? A few things have changed. Let's look at their team. We've got Lachlan Brook, which I think is a fantastic signing in for Auckland FC. Sam Cosgrove comes in, and Jack Girdwood is on loan. On the outs, had some big losses. Nader Marino, Max Mader ended his loan at Shrewsbury Town. Alex Poulsen ended his loan, and Lewis Toomey, Tommy Smith, and Scott Galloway left. The re-signings for this season was Logan Rogerson, who signed on for 2026-2027 season. They are the powerhouses. They did set the standard in their first year, and backed by Bill Foley, they certainly have strong intentions and did set the record of 235,316 people coming through with the highest average of 18,101. So they've definitely captured the audience over there in Auckland and have ticked all the boxes for me. And I think Steve Corica, the coach, had a great season last season. They'll be disappointing with their finals campaign, and they'll be ready to atone after last year.
They just did so many things so well last season, right from the start. As soon as they were established as a club, they got into the community, they had buy-in, they made sure that every decision was part of a bigger picture for Auckland FC. They brought in the recruits they brought in were not only New Zealand players, a lot of them, but a lot of them were from Auckland themselves. And even like the strategic move of bringing Alex Paulson across, he obviously signed for Bournemouth, but then they got him on loan. But it's a bit of that rivalry with the Wellington Phoenix, but they really bought in. Couldn't have started the season any better with 6 straight wins. I think the A-League schedulers did a good job in terms of keeping them in New Zealand for a lot of it, allowing them to build that momentum. They had the early derbies there against Wellington Phoenix, and very, very quickly became the superior team in New Zealand, with winning all 3 of the New Zealand derbies throughout the season over Wellington Phoenix. They were solid, as you mentioned in the intro there, most clean sheets with 12, conceded the most fouls. So they made themselves tough to beat, but also had some attacking flair when they needed to as well. Yeah, probably don't know how many goals must have come from Francis de Vries, his left foot. whip them into the box. Such a dangerous weapon, and they just did what they needed to do. And then, as you said, it's probably very disappointing for them, as crazy as it seems, that they didn't go on and do the double in their first season. And we know that with Bill Foley's backing and the history of some of his teams, his other franchises, how much he does like to win. I think his NHL team, the Vegas Knights, I think they're called, they won a trophy very early in their tenure, if not for the first season. So yeah, there's high expectations on Auckland FC for this season. I've seen some rumours as well of what their plans are for next season. They're looking at, you know, making their off-field activations even better to draw in bigger crowds. They obviously established the Port last season, their supporter base, so that was fantastic. They're talking about like a player entrance this season where players walk through a park and walk through a tunnel to kind of cheer them in, very kind of American style. But they're just they're not resting on their laurels from what they did last season. They're really looking to push forward and do even more, which is daunting probably for the rest of the league, but exciting for any neutrals that are just looking to lift the standard, because they were ready last season where probably a lot of other clubs weren't, and they saw an opportunity to come in and lift that level of professionalism, and they certainly did that.
Oh, it's such a strong model and a good template for others to follow. There's definitely setting the standard. I want to mention a New Zealand international, Jesse Randall, the 23-year-old. Did got limited minutes last year, but has made obviously a cracking start in pre-season and one to watch for from the New Zealand point of view as he develops through the New Zealand ranks over there with Auckland. But their gun signing Lachlan Brook, the real goal scorer. It's what they probably needed in the finals. A real match player like Lachlan Brook, and he potentially for me is going to be the golden boot.
Yeah, good call there. And look, I looked at some of his highlights when he was signed by Auckland FC, just to remind myself of the player he was, and some absolutely fantastic strikes. Got a great highlight reel. In addition to Lockie Brook, Jake Gerberdreich comes in. He's previously worked under Steve Corica at Sydney FC, so he'll know what Corica expects from him. And I think he's a good pickup. Very limited guy time at St. Louis City. In his time in the MLS, he went over there pretty young from Sydney FC, but good chance for him. He's just on loan from St. Louis City, so good chance for him to establish himself again. Ollie Sales, in very interesting storyline. He was at Wellington Phoenix, fantastic there. Went over to Perth and didn't have the best time, albeit in a struggling team. So we'll see how he settles in here at Auckland. Dean Hall, very interesting pickup as well. So he came over last season from the Mariners, but had his injury troubles. But he's a solid player, and see if he can continue to progress this season. And Marley Francois is an interesting one as well, because he was picked up halfway through last season last year. So he's a young Australian talent, and we'll see if he can continue to kick on and continue to get game time this season.
Okay, Chief, let's look at their first 5 games. Well, they have their first chance to redeem the finals loss to Melbourne Victory, and they kick off with them at. It will be away from home though, but hopefully that's a really cracking crowd because that really deserves a lot of people to watch. So I think it'll be a really good game. Then they go play Wanderers, Adelaide, Phoenix, and Brisbane. So I think that's a pretty fair start. For their first 5 games, and they're undefeated in the first 6 or 7 last year, and I think they'll pretty much get off to a solid start again this year.
Yeah, looking at those five, I think they would look at least winning four of those 5 games to get off to another cracking start. So no doubt that's the expectation that'll be on the club, and I'm sure that Steve Corica will have his men primed to do that.
And your prediction, Chief, where are you putting Auckland FC this year in the A-League table?
It's probably a bit boring, but I do have them first. I just don't think that they've dropped away at all. If not, they've strengthened, and I think that they'll continue their form throughout the season. I'd be very surprised if they're not right up the top of the table. And what about you?
Predicting first, they're first on the pitch, first off the pitch. They're just the whole structure that they've got and the vision that they've got. I hope the pyramid aligns for them because they deserve to be put on the highest stage. This is the club that is on the move and setting high standards. So, no doubt, first place for me. Their squad's too strong, and I think with the addition of Lachlan Brook, just adds that attacking option up front and be a bit more clinical. They will be very difficult to beat this year.
Okay, Mopper, next let's touch on Brisbane Roar. Let's first look back at last season. They finished 12th. Their record was 5 wins, 6 draws, and 15 defeats. In their first 12 games last season, got off to a shocking start, 10 losses and 2 draws. Well, they came up against Sydney FC and I think it was 4-3 in an absolute thriller for their first win of the season. They kept only one clean sheet all season, and I think that it was they picked up their first win at Suncorp in just under or just over a year during that season. So fantastic to see the fans finally get a win at Suncorp Stadium, but that's a long time between drinks for their fans. It was an absolutely shocking season, mate. They were behind the eight ball right from the start, under pressure, and it just didn't get any better during the season. Probably their best period of the season was really, really late in the season when all the pressure was off and they finally were able to get some results. They obviously lost Thomas Waddingham during the season as well. So yeah, it didn't help their play, but I think for them they probably stayed in games for a little bit, but a lot of goals were conceded late, so they couldn't keep up the intensity, whether that was a fitness thing or just personnel, I'm not sure. But yeah, they just had a shocking season and really felt for their fans, and let's hope that at least that they can turn it around for this season coming up.
Yeah, it was pretty disappointing times. Only 5,463 average crowd last year, but I think they're the Smokies this year on the rise. I'm not sure where to put them, but there's a lot of positive talk. And after 7 years in Europe, Michael Valkanis is definitely bringing back the enthusiasm and energy back into Brisbane Roar, and has started with some really good signings. It's really who's in and who's out. There's a lot on the Brisbane menu, but I think they're on the right track. Not sure where to place them this year. It'll be very interesting to see how they go. But the signs, I think, are a lot more positive, and you've seen that in pre-season, and you can see that in the talk from the group from Brisbane Roar. They've got a lot to catch up on, but I definitely think they're on the right track with the right leader.
I agree. I think it's a good move bringing in Valkanis. He's a little bit unproven, but certainly what he is doing is galvanizing the squad, and we won't know what that looks like until the ball is kicked in round one. But it certainly looks like they're on the right track. So they've picked up some good results in the preseason, as you said. They had a bumper crowd up there at Sunshine Coast, so really starting to get the community behind them. So let's talk about some of the players that have come in. Milorad Stajic has come in. James McGarry comes back to the A-League from Aberdeen. Hossein Ability, who was there last season, but comes back into the squad. Michael Roos, picked up from Western United. Dean Bazanis returns from overseas. Interesting whether he'll get a start in the first team. Christopher Long comes in as a striking option, as does Justin Vidic as well. Dimitri Valkanis, Michael's son, comes over. I think he was playing in Greece before, as was Georgios Varakis as well. And then they picked up Jordan Lawton, who is an exciting talent at Western United, as well as Matthew Dench. So good mix of bit of experience there, but some exciting young talents as well. On the way out, they had Keegan Jelicic, which was the end of his loan, and the experience of Florent Berenguer, Luis Zabala, Adam Zimmerino. The veteran Corey Brown goes out. Rafael Struk, who was the Indonesian player who set their Instagram followers through the roof, but didn't necessarily do much on the field. Asumaba Abubakar, he was one of their exciting talents that was brought in during the season. Sad to see him leave the A League, but yeah, he certainly did a lot for them last season. The veteran Jack Hingett has moved on, as well as Walid Shaw, Matt Acton, the keeper. Lucas Harrington will be there, but he'll be leaving in January to go to the Colorado Rapids. And then Pearson Kasawaya has also left. And they've got a couple of re-signings in Anthony Burke-Gilroy and Austin Ludwig. So probably similar to a few other clubs, fair bit of experience going out the door, but I think they've topped up pretty well in terms of what they're looking at for next season. I think there's a few players there that have been to a couple of clubs that will be looking to prove themselves. So it'd be interesting to see if Michael Valkanis can get the best of them.
Oh, look, pre-season signs have been very promising. They're really gelling well, and they put in some really good experience from overseas. I'm expecting them to, as I said, be a bit of a smoky and move up the league. We've got some great fan comments too. Do you want to read the fan views out? First one from Jacob from Brisbane Roar.
Yeah, Jacob, a Brisbane Roar fan, has kindly shared his opinions on a few things that we've asked for from our listeners. So he said the players to watch: Michael Roos and James McGarry, which I certainly agree with. Roos is probably one of those players that I mentioned that I'm probably looking for a bit more game time, a bit more of an opportunity. His hopes and fears for the upcoming season, saying they could make a push for finals, but don't believe we recruited too well at centre back, which would be our Achilles heel, and his prediction is they'll finish somewhere between sixth and eighth. And we've got one more from Ross Ball Forever, who said Milorad Stajic will either be the best central defensive midfielder in the league or get the most red cards, or he might be both. Um, we ride the wave of optimism. We have somehow picked up this off season to finals, but only if we fix our wasteful attack we have shown so far. So he's got them as fifth. So he's pretty optimistic. But that Milorad Sturgis storyline will be interesting to watch. I did see a few other comments as well that said that he really plays on that line of, as Ross Paul has said there, just red card or just that really, big challenge. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see him go about the pitch for Brisbane Roar this season.
Yeah, he's capped at Bosnia under 21 level. Had a little short stint with Switzerland and the under 18s. He's only 23 years of age, born in Switzerland. So he'll be a very exciting prospect out here. And it's good to see. And I think that's great recruiting, isn't it? Like you said, it could be the best CDM of the and best signing of the league. So watch that space. And yeah, I definitely for Jacob, really excited to see the growth of Lucas Harrington. It's a shame that he can't be loaned back for the full year, being only so young. He's a real talent, and hopefully we get to see him start. I think he's got a bright future, Lucas Harrington, and yeah, we wish the back four all the best because I do agree with Jacob. They are a bit thin at the back.
All right. Yeah, you mentioned Lucas Harrington, certainly a player to watch. We did see him get some game time in the most recent Under-20 World Cup in that game against Cuba. He was actually fantastic in that game. So let's hope we get to see a lot more of him this season before he does make that move in January. Sam Klein, he was a revelation last season. Plenty of energy in that midfield and doesn't mind popping up with the odd goal as well. Sam Klein.
Yeah, 5 from 8, Chief, in the appearances at the end of last season. So and he ended up equal top goal scorer. So that midfield with defensive cover and his attack might be one of the strongest in the league.
Yeah, he just likes those late runs into the box, and yeah, he's certainly pretty clinical when he gets in position. Jordan Lawton coming in from Western United didn't get a heap of time at Western United, but I'm excited to see him get more of a run. Scored a absolutely spectacular overhead goal for Western United against Perth Glory during the season, but he's much more than just that spectacular goal. Jacob Brissett, he didn't get a lot of game time under Ruben Zakovic. He's tended to be more of a impact player off the bench, but when he did come off the bench, he was one of those players that just loved to run at his defender and take him on and either get a shot away or get a cross into the box. So exciting young talent, and let's see if he can kick on as well. And speaking of exciting young talents, Quinn McNichol, let's see if he can finally break through for some consistent game time. Has been spoken about for the last couple of years. Still very young, but hopefully he's well and truly in Michael Valkanis's plans for the upcoming season.
Yeah, future's looking bright for Brisbane. So I think they've done really well and they've got a really good balance and mix. I don't think Brisbane have got enough at the back. I agree with Jacob. But there's some exciting attack there, and I think they'll put it together and move up the table. I'm just not sure how far they can reach, but they'll definitely be close to the playoffs.
The
Something.
preseason results have been pretty good, and we'll just have to see how they get on the park. But yeah, I've also got them ninth, but certainly think they're going to be a bit better.
All right, up next are the Central Coast Mariners. Let's have a look back at last season. They finished 10th. Their record was 5 wins, 11 draws, and 10 losses. Really, their story of the season, they lacked goals and they lacked a lot of experience. Of course, they were coming on the back of their treble winning season, and few seasons before that, they had lost some key players and they'd replenished okay, but I think this was just one season too far. They never really looked likely to defend their premiership or their championship after losing some key players, two of which were very influential in Max Ballard, who of course went to NAC Breda, and Josh Nisbet, who went to Ross County and is now at Roda JC in the Netherlands. So losing those two, amongst some others, just really put them behind the eight ball from the start. They also missed some key players through injury during the season. Trent Sainsbury came to the club with plenty of hype, hoping that we could see the best of him, but unfortunately he had lots of injury troubles. They also had a terrible time in the ACL Elite competition. I'm not sure if they even picked up a point through that whole campaign. And then their season really ended with a whimper. They won just one of their last 14 games for a very, very disappointing title defense. So, yeah, it was a very disappointing season for the Central Coast Mariners fans after having so much success over the past 2 seasons.
Yeah, they've got some massive challenges through the club at the moment, and it's been well documented about the coach, Mark Jackson, departing the club, which has just made it even harder for Central Coast a week before the start of the season. Lots of rumours around. Things don't look good on the Central Coast, and I think it'll have a massive impact to the start of the season until they get stability. There's been talks internally about getting someone in the next 2 weeks and their assistants obviously taking over. It's not the way you want to begin a season. Their pre-season's been poor as well, and I think they're going to be in for a lot of challenges. One good thing are a couple of experienced signings that have come in, and that's Andrew Redmayne and James Donachie, which will be influential with Trent Sainsbury. They're going to have to show some real leadership to try to get this club through this difficult time. We reflected on last year, and I think we're heading in the similar direction. What's your feedback on the ins and outs?
Yeah, I agree with you. Andrew Redmayne, James Donachie, definitely be inclusions in terms of experience, even if they're kind of past their prime. Both of them, yeah, Will Kennedy coming in. Yeah, twin brothers, the Harides, Alexi and James. So, but they're youngsters, so not sure they'll see much game time throughout the season. Caltech's a big out. He wasn't at his best last season, but still one of their better players and pretty solid at the back. Alu Qual didn't have his best season last season. We'll see how he gets on at the Western Sydney Wanderers. A lot of the rest of them very much fringe players in terms of Noah Smith, Will Wilson, Sasha Kasevsky, Jack Wachowski, keeper. He's ended at Melbourne Victory, I think. Mikel Docker is a big loss. He was very influential in their trophy winning seasons and really, yeah, even last season, he was one of their shining lights. So he'll be a big miss for their, well, he started off as a right back, ended up playing as a 10 with the way that they set up, but he'll be a big loss. And I really think that they're going to have to rely on a lot of their young players coming through. As I said, if Redmayne and Donachie can provide that, some experience in there. But yeah, I think it's going to be a very, very challenging season for them.
Yeah, look, last year, 6,392 fans averaged out watching the Central Coast Mariners as they struggled through last year, and I think they're heading in the same direction and probably worse. The instability of everything that's happened and going on, I think they're in for a very shaky start. They've got the F3 derby to start with the Jets, and we've also seen how strong the Jets are at the moment, winning the Hahn Cup. Then they've got Sydney FC, Wellington, Perth, and the Wanderers. Chief, I'm tipping them to come last. I don't think this is going to be very pretty at all, why all this goes under the bridge at Central Coast. And look, I feel sorry for the Mariners fans, but they've bounced back before. One saving light they do have up there is they've always seemed to produce young talent, and I think they've got another one up there that I believe is very talented, and that's definitely H&M's. The 17-year-old has got a lot of potential, but hopefully there's a lot more around that the academy can produce to find that next gem in the pocket up there in Central Coast.
I've also got them last. I actually didn't have them in last until Mark Jackson departed the club. I thought that he might be able to lift them a bit higher, but I think that's a blow that they're not going to be able to overcome. Looking at those first 5 games, probably a couple in there that they might look at as an opportunity for a win. But I'll tell you what, if they come into that F3 derby and it doesn't go their way, and the Jets put some goals behind them, it's not going to set their season off to a cracking start. You mentioned Hayneem's there. There are some other good, young, talented players, and they're just going to have to step up this year. Brad Tapp missed majority of last season with a significant injury, so good to see him back playing preseason games. Mikel DePizio, he's missed plenty of game time as well, so he'll be looking to have an impact. Nathan Paul, the young centre back, so it'll be interesting to see him potentially play again alongside Donachie. He's a very talented young kid, great ball player and great skills for a tall, rangy defender. So hopefully he continues to kick on. Dylan Praich-Cullen's an interesting one for me. Sue, obviously, he played a lot of last season in goals for the Mariners, but with Andrew Redmayne coming in, I wonder if he'll get the starting spot or whether genuinely they're going to need Redmayne's experience on the field to get them through, which would be a shame because Praich-Cullen made some mistakes, as all young keepers do, but really found his feet during the season in a tough one for the Mariners last season.
Yeah, well, we wish Mariners fans all the best, and hopefully they can find and recapture some youth and talent come through, and the experienced fellas that we discussed can obviously support them through the season. All right, next team up is Macarthur Bulls. Last season, they finished 8th with a record of 9 wins, 6 draws, 11 losses. Only won 2 games from February after they lost several key players in the January transfer window. Jed Drew, Piol, Oliver Jones, and Valerie Germain all left, and obviously only won twice at home as well as another damning statistic. We do lose. If I look at their crowd numbers, aren't that crash hot either. But I think this year there might be some promise for those fans out there. They averaged 4,662, and they won the Australia Cup last year, beating Melbourne Victory. But this year were knocked out in the semis by the Jets, and they were just a little bit slightly unlucky. Their Asian Champions League 2 commenced at the same time when they were facing the Jets in a short space of time. So they had to kind of juggle those 2 big games. And unfortunately, they lost both of them. But I think this year, Macarthur, with their ins and outs, are looking very promising and have 4 Socceroos that have played that will obviously strengthen this side. I think they're definitely going to be on the move this year. And let's look at the ins and outs.
Just before I get to that, I think I had them obviously booked in to go back to back in the Australia Cup until the Jets knocked them out. I think a big challenge for them this season will be balancing their ACL2 commitments. They've already played a couple of games in that competition already, but they're just going to have to manage their squad. But I think they have recruited pretty well with that in mind. So in terms of the ins, Jidong Wan comes over from Suwon FC. Anthony Caceres, a big in with his experience coming from Sydney FC. A couple of boys from Melbourne City in Callum Talbot and Harry Politides. And then we've got a few players on scholarship contracts, that being Zane Helwa, Will Mackay, and Sebastian Krizlovic. And Sima Gujan. Damien De Silva comes in. Plenty of experience from Damien De Silva, obviously formerly of Melbourne Victory. Rafael Duran Martinez, and then one of their latest signings, Luke Vickery, who comes across from Western United. Their outs, a few key ones really. Keely Adamson comes out. Obviously, he got his move to QPR, but Callum Talbot's probably like-for-like replacement there. Even Buita played a lot at left-back last season, so we'll see what plans they've got for him. Danny De Silva, Jan Nicolou, Peter Makrolos, Jake Holman got his move over to Warsaw in England. Kevin Bowley, Saif Eden Kawi, and Maran Yakulish. He's probably a big loss. He was weapon down that left for them. So they made a couple of smart re-signings as well with Luke Bratton and Matt German, probably the pick of those re-signings. So I think they've consolidated pretty well. As I said, as you said, Michael, they fell away from January onwards last season when they lost some of those key players. But I think they've recruited reasonably well. And obviously with these ACL2 games in mind, trying to balance what they need to do at both competitions.
Yeah, I think the four former Socceroos, not in the current squad, Caceres, Bratton, German, and Economides are huge players for them, and I think their experience will put them up at the pointy end of the table. They're probably the second highest team with the most amount of former Socceroos in the A-League, and a couple of under-20s players didn't make the squad, but were in the previous Asia Cup squad as well on their books. So I think they've got a really nice balance, and I think they're going to be really solid this year, and I think they're going to be challenging Auckland. I don't think they can catch them, but I reckon Macarthur, I've tipped them to come second this year, runners up. And I don't think being in the Asian Champions League 2 will be benefit. They've had a good 3-0 win there over Beijing, Guan, and they're looking really good. And I reckon that semi-final in the Han Cup probably just come at the wrong time for them with their Asia Cup campaign starting. And they look very solid football team, and I think the potential's there to be right up the top this year.
Yeah, I've got them third, mate. I think they're going to be right up there as well. A couple of players that I wanted to mark out to watch: Alex Robinson, the keeper, and Oliver Randazzo. Our friends Delhi was part of that under-20 Asian Cup winning squad, but didn't make the World Cup squad. And Bernardo Oliveira, who has had his injury problems, been a little bit in and out, but I think he might be able to have a breakout season this season. Let's have a look at also at their first 5 games, and we've added in some of those ACL2 games through some context as well. So they start off with Brisbane, and then they're going to play first game of, their third game will be of the ACL2 campaign in Vietnam, and then playing Adelaide United, the Wanderers. Then they've got another ACL2 game, that one's at home though, and then Sydney FC and Wellington. So I suppose in terms of their campaign as a total, the fact that that second ACL2 game is at home and they play the Wanderers and Sydney FC between those two, so not a lot of trouble for them. So that's at least something for them. But they are really going to have to find that balance. But I think they're very promising this season.
All right, let's look at Melbourne City, the champions and second in the A-League table last year with their record of 14 wins, 6 draws, 6 losses. Vidmar came into the season with question marks but proved the doubters wrong straight away, and they were the least goals conceded, very strong at the back, and they look strong again this year, although a bit younger. They're less than 1 per game, so it just goes to show how hard they'll break down. They do have Asian Champions League, though, to deal with this year, and have shown a lot of young talent, obviously in the Han Cup and in the Asian Champions League, due to a number of players being at the Under-20s World Cup and obviously other commitments. They have number 1 in big chances missed, though, so need to be a little bit more clinical. But when you finish second in the champions, it's only fine margins. They dealt with a huge injury crisis during the season by being forced to use a lot of young players, but they thrived, and they have been a production team, and they invest very heavily in the youth system, and you can see that again through their side this year. You probably look at them first look and you see them a lot in the Han Cup and the Champions League and go, wow, there's the talent there, but can they match it in the A-League with the physicality? But they definitely look very silky and have got a lot of young talent. So what's changed? They are in the ACL Elite this year, and just really unfortunate those young team that went over to Japan and just lost 1-0 in that final couple of minutes. Would be great experience for them. They've had a good pre-season. They did lose to Apia in the Han Cup as well. That was a bit of a cup set, and we're obviously good preparation for obviously this A-League. Let's look at the players in and out with Chief. Let's go through the players.
Yeah, I think one good thing from last season, as I said, as you said, so They did have a lot of injuries to their experienced players. But what it did do is force them to play those young players, and the likes of Lawrence Wong and Medin Mehmedi, Max Caputo came back at a really crucial time for them from his injury as well. So they were able to actually get through those games reasonably unscathed. And then even when some of the more experienced players came back, some of those younger players kept their spots. So yeah, real credit to Aurelio Vigmar, who did a fantastic job with his squad last season. And yeah, as you said, plenty of pressure on him to start with, but yeah, he can't say too much about him because yeah, champions. So let's have a look at their ins. Probably when you look at it, only two coming from outside. So Takeshi Kanamori has come in. Saw a bit of him in that ACL Elite game and looked pretty sharp. Liam Bonity also comes in at the back as well. So very promising young talent that obviously went to the Under-20 World Cup as well. A lot of the other ones being brought up through their academy. So Beckham Baker, Elbasan Rashani, Bessian Kutleshi, Hakeem Gerard, huge raps on Hakeem Gerard actually, and Matthew Baker as well. Outgoing is Stephen Ugarkovic, who's gone to the Western Sydney Wanderers. Harry Politides has gone to MacArthur. Arian Suleimani to Perth. Callum Talbot also to MacArthur. James Jago has retired. Marco Tilio obviously back to Celtic, but now has since got to move away from Celtic as well. And Jonathan Cohen announced that he was leaving a little bit after the season as well, him being obviously the one who scored the crucial goal in the grand final. And they've made a couple of good signings. I think they've really, with their promotions from their academy and the re-signings, they've got a real intent for what they want to do this season and continually bring through their youngsters. And I know a few of the Melbourne City fans are a bit concerned in that way that they have only brought in youngsters, but I think that's going to be of benefit to them longer term.
Yeah, you look at they're owned by the City Group and obviously high standards there, and they've been very consistent throughout the A-League. Average crowd of 6,192. They'd love to see that increase, but they're stable. They've got stability. They're in the Champions League. They are the champions. As I said, second last year, and they're just a production line, aren't they? And look, we're not just talking about talented youngsters. We're talking about top tier youngsters because they've always been able to produce that top tier. And the A League's kind of a young man's game at the moment, isn't it? You've seen that shift and change in generations in the last couple of years. So would have been more concerned a few years ago if they had that many youngsters in, but now it's that kind of breeding ground, the A League, and you see more and more youth come through, and we're talking top tier here. There's some real talent on these books.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to seeing how these young players get on. Let's read out a bit of fan feedback, which we asked for and we really appreciate. So the first one from CM Punky's back, who says, Melbourne City, with the youth movement they're going, I think they will struggle against the bigger sides, aka Victory, Sydney, Auckland, but should finish top 6. Players to keep an eye on, Harry Shillington, Akeem Gerald, yeah, as I mentioned before, plenty of people talking about him, Nasovsky, Kutleshi, and Lawrence Wong as well. And then from Twizzler on YouTube, they think they'll finish third. Players to keep an eye on, Max Caputo, Kavian Rahmani, and Takeshi Kanamura, they're signing. And then in terms of hopes and fears, he hopes the academy products pay off, and his fear is injuries, which they had plenty of last season.
I think the challenge, I can see the point in with the youth, but wow, if you watch Vissel Kobe and those players really standing out, and you're talking about top tier league, top tier team that's fighting out the championship in J League. They held their own, and I think if they can hold their own at that level, I'm super confident they could hold their level at A League. They might, struggle against the Auckland sides, a bit more experienced, but if you look at Sydney, they're just as young. So and obviously, look at Newcastle, they're just as young as well. So Victory, they've got a mix of experience and youth. So a lot of these players, definitely from the city, are definitely on that younger bracket, but they are definitely holding their own already at this level. That's why I think their top tier talent will get them through. And I still tip them to come third. I think they're in the top 3 or 4 for me for sure. What about players to watch though? You got Liam Bonatig that's come back from overseas. Maxi Caputo had a good under 20s campaign, scored a couple of goals. Lawrence Wong, Patrick Beach, Kai Truan. He could be the A-League Player of the Year. I think he's in for a big year. Kai Truan, whether they play him that 6 or whether they play him central defence, they're going to be very hard to break down. And like you said, I think the key will be whether Max Caputo can actually lead that line. Will be the defining factor in where they land in that top 6.
Just funny thing, you look at Kai Truan and Liam Bonatig, like they really could be your central defenders, but they've also got the experience of Cyprian and Ferreira as well. So plenty of experience for these guys to learn from. But wouldn't be shocked if at some point that season Truan and Bonatig are playing together. And it's no surprise that these players we're looking at, we know plenty about them already because Max Caputo, obviously under 20 World Cup. Lawrence Wong was fantastic when he came in last season. I think he's got an injury to start the season, so it might be a little bit until we see him. Patrick Beach, plenty think that he's next cab off the rank for the Socceroos. You'd say that those top 3 keepers are the best we've got so far, but plenty think that he might be next in line as the 4th keeper. So, yeah, plenty of talent in that squad and very exciting to see how they get on and how they defend their championship. Let's look at their first 5 games, mate. They've got the Wanderers first up, and then they play an Asian Champions League game at home. Then they've got the Glory, Brisbane, another ACL game, this time in Japan. And then they've got Melbourne Victory and Adelaide. So not too bad a run to start the season. Like we said with MacArthur, they're going to have to balance their Asian commitments as well. I've got them second. I think they're going to have a really great season. And I know that a lot of other people have them a bit lower down, but I really think that they can back up what they did last season.
Yeah, the big Melbourne Derby, 8th of November. It's just a shame they have to come back from Machida. I've got in a short recovery time for that. So, look, it'll be exciting, 8th of November. So, no doubt the fans will get out for that one. But, yeah, look, I think onward and upward for City. They've always produced and they've always developed young youth. So, they're looking pretty promising. If you're a City fan, I think you're in for another good year. All right, next up is Melbourne Victory, who finished 5th last year. They were in the grand final. They did upset Auckland in a really big semi-final last year to make it, but unfortunately lost to City 1-0. Their record was 12 wins, 7 draws, 7 losses. They do have the 3rd highest season average crowd of 12,778, which we would expect Melbourne Victory fans. Very loyal base down there, and they'll be looking to grow on that one as well. Patrick Cosnorbo, though, leaves after just 7 games last year, and Arthur Dials had to come in and take charge on an interim basis, going winless in the first 6 games before signing a permanent deal and really getting that stability. Lost just twice at home last season, which you'd expect. It's a fortress down there at Melbourne Victory, but haven't won the A-League Championship since 2017-2018, which is a very interesting fact. And again, they've been heavy on the recruitment as they try to get up to that next level again, which they've been trying to do for the last few years, just falling short. What's the player movement in and out?
Yeah, I was actually really concerned about Victory until probably a month or 6 weeks ago because they hadn't done a lot of work in the transfer market and they'd lost a fair few of their key players from last season, but they've really stepped up their game more recently and they've brought in some fantastic signings and really there's some young talent and there's ones that work, but that were the young talent probably a few years ago have gone and tried their hand overseas and come back. So plenty of storylines to keep an eye on. Let's go through the ins. Louis Dorigo, Keegan Jelicic, Franco Lino is in on loan. Kane Razmovsky, Sebastian Esposito, obviously part of that under 20 team. Jason Davidson, plenty of experience there at left back. He's even playing left centre back, I think, at times at his previous club. Henry Saglan comes in on loan. Jack Mihalidis was promoted through the academy, as is Daniel Lazarevsky. Oliver Dragicevic, Xavier Stella, Denny Jonro is a big one coming in for sure. Jack Wachowski's come across from the Mariners. Matt Grimaldi, massive signing in my eyes, one of the key ones from Western United.
He's a star.
Yeah, and their big marquee signing, Juan Mata, very interesting how he will be used. Maybe we'll touch on him in a sec, mate. Let's just first touch on their out. So Fabian Monge, Alex Menelo, Christian Siciliano, Casey Boss, a big one leading for Mines. Daniel Zani has gone for Varos, Ryan Teague, Mitch Langrak retired. Zinedine Mashash has also left as well. So it's almost like as big ins as they are out, but I think they're probably slightly stronger. There's definitely some big outs there. You think of Casey Boss, was key last season. Teague was very influential. Azani had his moments. Mashash is a big out in my eyes as well. So different profile type players, but I think given the fact that Arthur Dillis has come in and it's his first season, probably trying to pick more players that are going to suit his style. What are your thoughts on Juan Mata? We did briefly discuss this on the podcast when he signed, but I think I don't expect him to play a load of minutes, but I think he's going to be much better suited to Arthur Dillis' system.
Yeah, we talked before. It's the right formation for him and the right club, the right style of football. I think tick, tick, tick for those three boxes. I think playing with Grimaldi or Grimaldi obviously will start for me. He's going to be an absolute star. He already is. And I think he'll play a nice cameo role with him and maybe come on for him later in the game as well. I think Victory got a huge amount of depth, but Yamada is just going to add those little moments. But I think the environment suits him better. Melbourne Victory, third highest crowd. I think everything fits in with Marta going to Victory. I just don't think Marta fitted in with Western Sydney's formation and the style that they wanted to play. And we've seen the obviously the challenges when that happens. But I just think perfect team, perfect fit. Melbourne Victory, and I think they'll use him well. Arthur's going to have a full pre-season, as you said, and they've got some real depth, real experience. I just think this is a very strong team, and will be right up there challenging. They've got depth over the park. They have lost a lot of key players, but have brought in just as good and even strengthened, like you said.
I think Patrick gave us some feedback on X. I think he makes some really good points. So he says, surely the recruitment of Louis Dorigo, Kean Jelicic, and Denis Jonro is a massive plus. All still relatively young, all now with some tough Euro club experience following the Segacic/Teague model. So we do see that a bit, players young going over to Europe and then coming back to the A-League. But those three in particular, I think, set for big seasons. Obviously, Jelicic was on loan at Brisbane Roar last season, so played in the A-League. But particularly the other two, they'll be looking to come back and make their mark for sure.
Oh, look, I picked Dennis Generou for the A-League Player of the Year. I think it's probably one of the best signings of the A-League, getting him back at Melbourne Victory. And they've got the under-20s captain. They've got Esposito, huge leader on the park. He'll fit right into that central defence. They're going to be hard to break down. They just look great at both ends, don't they, Victory? And then they're really solid in the middle with a bit of flair. Luis Dorigo, Lino, Jenner, who we spoke about, Grimaldi's going to have a breakout season, and Josh and Sarah as well, like a more talent there. So there's plenty to be excited about if you're a Victory fan. I think this is probably one of the most solid squads they've put together for a long time.
Let's have a look at their first 5 games, mate. Auckland, the rematch of that semi-final. Then they got the high-flying Jets in their second game, Perth in their third, big Melbourne derby, as we mentioned in the Melbourne City preview, and then Big Blue against Sydney FC. So there are some tough games in that first 5 fixtures. So I think getting off to a good start will be key to their campaign.
Yeah, massive start against Auckland, but they're at home, and we said how tough they are at home. We expect a massive crowd. Auckland, I think there's only a few away seats available for this one as well. Yeah, this could be huge. Well, and I think it's prime time TV as well. So, what a way to obviously start the season, have a Melbourne Victory play Auckland, and then play the Hahn Cup Newcastle side, and then Perth. Obviously, will be interesting to see how Perth goes, and then the Melbourne Derby, as we said, they've got an advantage there with City obviously having to play away in Japan, and then another big game, Sydney FC. So, wow, if you're a Victory fan, you're going to get your money's worth, especially in that first 5 games, aren't you? It's going to be crackerjack games, all the big ones.
Absolutely, mate. And what's your prediction for Melbourne victory this season?
Oh, I picked fourth, but I reckon between 2, 3, and 4 is going to be super tight. I may have undershot it a bit. I think they're going to be right up there with Auckland, but yeah, no, definitely minimum 4 for me. They're definitely in the top 4.
I've got them sixth. I
We
think
won't
they.
hold that against you, mate. That's okay. The
Well,
victory fans, Patrick won't be happy with that.
I think it might take a little bit of time for their players to gel in, but look, I think they'll definitely be in the finals mix for sure. But as I said, that finals race is going to be really tight. So we'll see how they end up.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I let's hope victory are number one with season average crowd too, and get all those crowds back. And they've definitely got the first 5 tasty games to get into at the start of the year. All right, let's go to the Hahn Cup champions, Newcastle Jets. We've been talking a lot about this moving club, and last year they had 6,608 fans season average. I reckon that'll double this year. There's some excitement up in Newey, and absolutely Mark Milligan has brought the spark. We've seen a great start to the season. Let's just recap, though, where they finished last year. So they finished ninth. Record was 8 wins, 6 draws, and 12 losses. They did have the third highest XG against. They had a better away record than home, which was quite surprising. And then last season, their young guns and their group weren't consistent enough, turning it in some games but not being able to back it up. So Eli Adams obviously was the star player, scoring some absolute cracking goals on the left. We did see a little bit of him in the Hahn Cup, but not much. Was he injured, Chief? We didn't see him in the final.
Didn't see any reports of him being injured, but potentially so. I would think that he's pretty integral to that group. Just depends on if Mark Milligan's going to use him the same way that Robbie Stanton did last season.
Yeah, and Robbie Stanton did a fantastic job, I thought, last year with the youngsters, and I think bearing the fruits of it this year. He's been replaced by Mark Milligan, and we've seen the talent that obviously he's brought in as well. So I think both Robbie Stanton and Mark Milligan should be patting the back early in the season. As we said, Australian Cup winners, and they looked very promising with great football and really fast press, fast movement. Ball movement was fantastic. So I think Newcastle fans, you have a lot to be excited about, and I believe will be the moving club. I'm just not sure how far up, but let's go in with the players' ins and outs with Chief.
Yeah, the massive one, Alex Badalado, well, in our eyes anyway. We've been tracking his progress a bit. He was obviously on the books at Western Sydney Wanderers, went to the Melbourne Victory on loan at the back end of last season. So I think he's going to get much more game time and will be given the opportunity to thrive. Maxi Burgess, similar storyline as well, got completely frozen out at Sydney FC, but there's a great player in there, and I think he's going to thrive in that environment. Joe Shaughnessy also comes in. James Delianov, keeper, comes in from Adelaide United. Joel Betaliso, Xavier Bertoncello got a scholarship deal, as did Lucas Cicluna, Christian Bracco as well, Max Cooper, and then they've also brought in Alex Nasiak. Looking at their outs, there's probably not too many big names. Dane Ingham goes out, Ryan Scott, Matt Scarcella, Justin Vidic, Wellersol, Callum Timmins, Jacob Dowse, Charles Mamombwa, Zach Bowling, and Philip Kankar. They've also re-signed Koda Mizunuma, who is a massive fan favourite up there at the Newcastle Jets. Can whip in an amazing free-kicking corner, which they benefited from a lot last season. And Daniel Wilmering, the left-back, is also re-signed. He's actually been popping up with a few nice goals and a few attacking moves, which I didn't know he had in his locker during the Australia Cup run. So it's interesting to see if that continues throughout the season.
Yes, and I love the comments we've got here, Chief. We've got the Jetstream players to watch, Burgess and Badalado. Yeah, well, we've seen how well Badalado went in the Asia Cup and the World Cup under-20s and the run-in with the Hahn Cup as well. Unfortunately, he had to miss that final. He was on World Cup duty. And one of my favourites, Bertoncello. Oh, I love his movement speed. He's fantastic. I can't wait to see him play this year. His hopes are qualify for the finals. Their fears we don't qualify for the finals, but
Can I tell you something about Jetstream? So
yeah, fire away.
in his original diagnosis of the season, he didn't put in a prediction. And when I pushed him for it, he said fifth, but he said it's our fault if they don't do well. So I'm sure he's going to bookmark this post and come back to it if the Jets have a shocking season. And I told him we've been talking about that for months. So I think it's going to be our fault in Jetstream's eyes if they don't have a good season.
Well, we've seen the talent, didn't we, in the Hahn Cup run, and we thought, well, we looked at Mark Milligan's style as well, coaching wise, and we looked at the players that they were bringing to obviously the club, and I just think the Battleado just really complements the youth that they already had in there. Burgess again, just not a fast or quick player, but a very smart and wise player around the pitch, and can really play the right ball, hold it up, and be in the right areas. I think his development in Sydney's helped him immensely, and I just think with all that speed around him, and I just think they've just got a lot of quality. And like I said, the A-League's as a little bit younger this year as like it was last year, and definitely a breeding ground. But we've been saying and watching this football, they're definitely on the move, and he's tipped fifth. I've tipped sixth. I think they're definitely in finals contention. I think they'll make that step, and I think the future is extremely bright up there if they can maintain and re-sign a lot of these players for a couple of years and really get a building of a side there. They've got the potential to go even further in a couple of years. What's your your top tip, Chief, prediction for the jet
I,
stream?
I've got them fourth. So apologies, Jetstream, if I've got them too high and have jinxed them. But I think they can build on this Australia Cup momentum. And I really think that Mark Milligan is a fantastic coach. And I think he's going to get a lot out of this young group that can develop. And let's not forget, Robbie Stanton did do a fantastic job with this group, developed them along a lot. And I think Mark Milligan, he's going to put his own stamp on it, but he's really going to benefit from the work that Robbie Stanton has done. So a couple of other players to look out for, mate. Xavier Bertoncello, who you've mentioned before. Eli Adams, I think he's just going to go to the next level this season. Tommy Aquilina, as well as Ben Gibson. So I've actually got just so much young talent. It's probably one of the biggest headaches is for Milligan is going to be how he's going to fit them in and manage their expectations throughout the season. Let's have a look at their start of the season. They start with the F3 Derby against the Mariners, and then a couple of tough games in Melbourne Victory and Sydney FC. So probably a good chance to see where they're at early in the season. They've then got Brisbane and Perth, which I think if they have expectations of being near the top of the ladder, they'll certainly want to win those games. So yeah, let's see how the Jets get on. We expect them to be pretty good, but let's see how close we are to the mark, mate.
Yeah, look, I think it's a lot more stable up there this year. Obviously, there's a good structure there now, and I think they're building nicely. And like you said, Robbie Stanton did a fantastic job of giving these young guys a go, and the Mark Milligans followed that progress and brought in some more young players. And I think, like I said, there's a lot of promise, and I'm super excited about the fans. That 6.5 that I said their season average, they would have seen that Hahn Cup run. They didn't play at home. They played around Newcastle, but I reckon they'd be super pumped to get out there, and I think they'll see some big crowds to start with. And if they can get that momentum rolling, they could really get Newcastle's hopes up and bring those fans through the gates, because the football they play, mate, it was exciting to watch.
Yeah, agree. And it's been a couple of tough probably more than a couple of tough seasons for the Newcastle Jets. They're right on the brink, not existing at all a couple of seasons ago. So it's really great to see them and see the progress that they've made over the past couple of years.
All right, Perth Glory. Let's have a look at their season preparation. Let's look back at last year. We've got come 13th, which was last. So very sad season last year for the fans and for the club. Their record was poor at 4 wins, 5 draws, 17 losses. David Zurich, first season as senior coach though, but he's made some big changes in January, but didn't have a lot of impact, unfortunately. One of just 2 teams to beat Auckland in the regular season. I can't believe that. That's unbelievable. How can a team finish last and get beat Auckland? That's extraordinary. Anyway, the potential's there. Least goals scored is a problem, and most goals conceded. So, but last at all ends. Pre-season results haven't been great either, and I'm a bit surprised about that because, look at their side and they've got 4 former Socceroos: Brigetti, Brendan O'Neill, Josh Risden, Adam Taggart. I thought they would have had a little bit more promise. Now, we've seen, obviously, Seriaso come over and give them an absolute hiding as well. So I was a bit surprised. I don't know where to put Perth at the moment, but let's look at their ins and outs.
Massive season for David Zulic as well. He came across with a lot of expectation. He was credited for a lot of that good work and the pressing that Sydney FC did under Ufuk Talay when he was Talay's number 2. So I think when he got over there, he realised that he didn't quite have the squad to do what he wanted to do. And as you mentioned, he made some moves in January that didn't really work out. But potentially in the off-season, he's got some of the players that he likes there. And I think it's going to be a very challenging season for him, but I'm sure that, they can't finish 13th, so they're going to improve in that sense. But I think they're going to want to see a lot of improvement in this squad. So some of their ins, so Brian Kaltak is a big in. He's come across from the Central Coast Mariners. A couple of boys from Wellington Phoenix, Sam Sutton and Scott Wooden. Callum Timmins also comes in. Mark Birigidi with his experience. Good to see Sebastian Despotovsky, son of Bobby Despotovsky, get rewarded. Oliver Evans also gets his scholarship contract. Arian Suleimani comes in. Kucharski is a big in from Sydney, obviously via Western United. Gabriel Popovic, Shabel Shamoon comes from Western United. Reece Plosinovsky is a great pickup point in my mind from Western United. And then just in recent days, Tom Lawrence, a Welsh striker, comes
That
in.
could be big.
Yeah, it could be big, but I also wonder where what he's going to do with all these striking options. Because when you do look at Kucharski, Taggart, and now Lawrence coming in, is he going to play a few of them a bit wider, or how is he going to manage that? So not sure what he's going to do there, but maybe it's a good headache for him to have players at his disposal. Let's have a look at the outs. Joel Anasmo is out. Jalen Pearman obviously going to QPR. And as Hamazui, Lockie Barr goes out. Patrick Wood, who was on loan from Sydney FC, goes back to Sydney FC. Riley Wallen is out. Tas Mordekudis, Yutu Misao, Tsuyuki Okamoto, Hiroki Ayama. A few of those boys came in January, but obviously didn't have the impact. Ollie Sale has gone to Auckland FC. Tomislav Mersla and then Nikola Miljuznic has gone to Wellington Phoenix as well. So probably given the season they've had, probably not too many disappointing outs. Pearman stands out, but he was still young as well. But he's obviously had the ambition. But a lot of the others, probably not the biggest out for them. So they've probably strengthened when you look at the ins. And then they've locked up a few of their key players. Probably Lockie Wales and Luke Amos are the key ones that they've re-signed. So definitely looking stronger than they did last season, for sure.
Yeah, they need to have a clean out, and hopefully Tom Lawrence will be their shining light. They just need, some leadership and obviously someone a bit more clinical up there. But they've got the players around them now to strike. It's whether they can obviously be consistent. I don't know where they sit. I'd like to have a little bit more optimism, but I thought I would have seen a bit more in pre-season. But pre-season's friendly, so it's hard to always get a gauge. But players to watch, Kucharski for sure. Maybe it's just that total blend that they need some time. Maybe they're a bit slow burners, but get build into the season. Maybe I just hard to place them. But their first 5 games they got Wellington, so I think they've got a great opportunity there. But then the 2 Melbourne teams, City and Victory, will really test them out, and then the Central Coast and Newcastle next. So an interesting start. And my prediction, I tried to put them up the ladder, but I just don't have much confidence with them at the moment. So I've picked them 11th. What are your thoughts on their season ahead?
Yeah, I've got them 10th. I could see them finishing higher for sure. Depends on how some of those recruits settle in. They haven't had the best preseason whatsoever. Lots of losses in games there, besides the ones they played against just local teams. So it's hard to tell much from preseason. I'm excited to see how some of these players get on. Despotovsky, obviously big shoes to fill with his dad, Bobby. Lizlarski that we saw in the Under-20 World Cup. Nathaniel Blair, who did well with the under-23 squad as well. Probably one of those ones I was thinking of before in terms of where he's going to get his opportunity up front. Kucharski, I'm looking forward to seeing him get a good run because, yeah, he didn't get the best run at Sydney FC last season. So hopefully for his sake, he's not just going there and going to have some better time as well. But I think there's some promise in there. But yeah, I just wonder if they are going to be as strong as some of the other teams we picked up a bit higher than them.
The fans' season average 6,300 last year. You know, they need some hope. Yeah, this is a club that used to perform at the top level, and it'd be great to see them come back, at least be a bit more competitive and make a run of it. I definitely think they're just going to be outside the finals, but not by much. I don't think, there's too many teams. I think it's going to be really tight in between those places of 5 to 10. So I hope Perth bring back some glory days and hopefully more success as they build this football club back to hopefully its pinnacle where it was.
What I will say about those 6,000 odd average fans is that they are very loyal. They haven't a lot to cheer about in the last few seasons. So credit to those Perth fans who have turned up week in, week out to see a pretty poor team over the last couple of seasons. And hopefully for their sake, they see some improvement for this season.
All right, so let's look at one of the powerhouses of the past, Sydney FC. But last year, it wasn't the case, and they missed the finals and on a very disappointing seventh place finish. Their record was 10 wins, 7 draws, 9 losses. They did have the second highest average crowd of 15,282, and we'll have a little bit of hindrance at the start of the season with Allianz going under construction with the drainage, forcing them away, going to obviously Leichhardt and some games in Cogra, I believe. They missed the finals despite needing just 1 point from their final 2 games to qualify. And that really shows me a poor mentality with those last 2 games that they couldn't get themselves in there. They had a star-studded team, failed to deliver on the field, and just didn't gel at all levels, I think, with Sydney FC last year. They also had the chance to make the final of the ACL2 competition, but failed in the semi-final. So a really disappointing finish to last year. Talai is definitely a man under pressure, and we've seen that in the media and all the comments come out. But he seemed like he found it hard to find that balance and of his talented youth team and his big name stars. He did concede the second most goals amongst the top 9 teams, and they're very vulnerable at the back. We did see a really good preseason performance with them against Wrexham, and we've seen some good young players there, but we've seen a penalty shootout loss in the Hahn Cup as well. But this is really the big question mark on this team. Where do they fit in A-League season 2025-2026? Let's break it down, Chief. What changes have they made?
I think Ufutale is under a huge amount of pressure. If they do not start well, I could see some changes at Sydney FC. I'm just going to stick my neck out there and say that one. Al Hassan Toure, I think that's a good pickup for them if he can find his best form. Patrick Wood comes back from his loan at Perth Glory. He's kind of been on the fringes there at Sydney for a few seasons now. I think they hoped he would have got some more game time and some more goals at Perth Glory last season, but didn't happen for Patrick Wood, so we'll see how he gets on. Reece Hewley comes in back from overseas, which I think is a fantastic pickup. Makola Con comes across from the Western Sydney Wanderers. Matthias McAllister gets promoted through their academy. Paul Okonengsler is massive signing for me. I think he's going to have a fantastic season in that midfield. Marcel Tisserand comes in at the back for plenty of experience. Piero Quispe is on loan. Could be a really exciting number 10 in their midfield. Victor Campzano also comes in. Abel Wallity was picked up from Western United. Exciting young talent. And then Ben Garuccio gets picked up late. So they already had a couple of options there at left back in terms of Joel King and Jordan Courtney Perkins. So I would expect Garuccio to start there, but wonder what that means for King and Courtney Perkins. I guess we'll have to wait and see. A few big outs as well. Patrick Klamala, their striker from last season. That was the end of his loan. Andrew Redmayne didn't play a lot last season, but he's gone to the Mariners, obviously. Joshua Sotirio came in during the season, but that was the end of his loan. Kucharski goes out. Max Burgess didn't play a lot or at all last season anyway. Arnis Wahim was a talent that I'm going to miss. Segicic, their he was used as a super sub by Ufuk Talay. He's obviously gone to Portsmouth. Caceres, I think that was the end of his contract, that they couldn't come to terms. He's gone to Macarthur Bulls. Leo Senna's a big miss, I think. That I think he could have really combined well with Paul Oakland-Engsler in that midfield. So see if they can replace him. Aaron Gerd has gone out on loan, even though he's still on the books of Sydney FC. Douglas Costa, the big superstar, has not returned. Whether he's a big out or not, I suppose, it depends on which way you look at it. He had his injury concerns last season, certainly when he was on the field. Some great moments of brilliance, but I don't know, in a funny way, I think that not having all these superstars might be of benefit to Sydney FC this season. Also out is Will Kennedy. And then they've made some good re-signings. Keeper Gus Huslett, Alex Green at the back, Camijo in their midfield, and then Ryan Grant as well are the big ones. So I think a lot of outs, a lot of ins. You could argue probably either way on how influential both sides are, but certainly a lot of changes for Ufuk Talay to deal with.
I agree with you though. I think it need to refresh. You could see it there that need to reset last year. The mentality just wasn't right. The balance wasn't right. But a lot of youth that's come into this side. You've got 4 Socceroos that have been around Socceroos, which is Ryan Grant, Alex Grant, Joel King, and Paul Ocon. Paul Ocon yet to start, but was in the Socceroos camp last year. Look, I'm super excited about Paul Ocon. You know what a big rap that I've been talking him up for a long time. I think this could be a key midfield addition, and I think Yuli will be exciting as well. They've already got some exciting players, and I think the spirit and the let them play, I think it'll be exciting. I think what you've got down there with Yuli, Ocon, McAllister, Quintal, they're sensational up and coming players. And we've seen against Wrexham, they just play with so much freedom, and some of the best football I've seen Sydney FC play for a while, rather than that mixed kind of balance that they were trying to find last year. But you've got some comments, so on send us some information, Chief. Do you want to pass that one on?
Yeah, it was JB on X who has said that Thiago Quintal, Matthias McAllister, and Paul Oakland-Engsler are the ones to watch for this season. Certainly ones that we agree with as well. His hopes are that the youngsters get a lot of minutes and develop, and his fear is that Talay's tactics will cost us defensively and he might alienate another player like he did with Burgess and Senna. So let's hope that's not the case for Sydney FC, and hope that he backs some of those young players to develop throughout the season. As you mentioned, that Wrexham game, we saw the likes of Joe Lacey, who's another one that we're going to keep an eye out for. He scored the winning goal in that game. Yeah, you mentioned the boys before, but I'll throw in as well Abel Wallacey, who's come across. So another exciting young talent to keep an eye out for. So lots and lots of potential. I prefer Sydney FC when they're not looking at that star-studded approach and it's more of a team mentality. But I guess we'll see how that pans out during the season. JB's got as top 6 minimum, and you can see them coming between 3rd and 5th realistically. So thanks for your feedback, JB. Looking at their first 5 games, mock up. They start out the first game of the entire season at Cooper Stadium against Adelaide United. So that's absolutely going to be an absolute bumper crowd there at Cooper's Stadium. They then take on the Mariners, the Jets, Cartha, and Victory. One thing I did note that they only actually have to travel out of New South Wales once in their first 7 games, and that one is their first game when they head to Adelaide. So between rounds 2 to 6, they're exclusively in New South Wales. So I think that's going to help them a lot in terms of the lack of travel. Of course, they had ACL2 to compete in last season as well. So I think for them to be able to settle into the season, that's going to be a big advantage.
Your prediction, my friend?
I have them in 5th. I think they're going to, as I said, I like it. I like Sydney FC when they're not bringing in these high-profile players. And I think in a funny way that not having Costa is actually going to be more beneficial. He might not, he's obviously going to bring the bums on seats, but I think as a team, they're going to work a lot better without the focus on a superstar.
Yeah, I think they've got a lot of run in them. I think their football's going to be good and exciting. And look, I think Tale's probably lucky he's got a good draw there to start with to build some of that confidence. Well, they'll obviously be tested in those first few weeks whether he's the right man for the job or not. But they'll need to get off to a good start, and I reckon they'll only just sneak in. Like I said, I think fifth down to 10th is very open, and it's going to be come down to small margins. So we wish the Sydney FC fans all the best, and they'll be no doubt looking forward to getting their ground back as well. But Leichhardt will obviously do a good job in supporting them while that happens. And JB, all the best for your team this year. All right, let's look at Wellington Phoenix. And last season they finished 11th, average crowd of 8,366. So it still shows they've got a lot of support over there. Again, they're one of the clubs that ownership-wise have been very good, stable ownership for them. The Wellnix Consortium has purchased the club back in 2011, and it's led by Rob Morrison and chaired by HRL Morrison and Co. They've been very stable. They've had some success, but they just dropped off last year after their New Zealand counterparts, Auckland, entered in the season, probably took a bit of shine, and it probably took a lot of depth out of Wellington last year, hence why I think they finished 11th and have struggled to regain a little bit of power back as well. I think Wellington struggled a little bit in the Hahn Cup, although they did get knocked out by Heidelberg, and I think Wellington's in for another tough season. What do you think's changed with Wellington this year, Chief?
Well, let's look back at last season first. Giancarlo Italiano, his second season in charge of the Wellington Phoenix, after he had an absolutely brilliant first season. They looked like they were pushing the Mariners right away to the premiership, and then were unlucky not to make the grand final in that season as well. So yeah, they lost a few players last season. Obviously, their keeper Alex Paulson moved to Auckland FC via Bournemouth, and they lost some other key players as well. So I think they really struggled, particularly in the middle part of the season, some really key injuries that set them back. And it was just a challenge for them all season. So I know that Italiano is pretty keen to mix up his playing style as he likes to do. And I think in that first season when he had them, they were very resolute defensively and were just smart. And when they went forward and they picked their moments, a lot of kind of wins by 1 goal margins throughout that season. And probably just when you look back at last season, they weren't getting a lot of that luck, I suppose, when you look at it. I think we will go through the ins and outs in a second, but I think one of the big ones is Costa Barbarouses, because a lot of their attacking went through him. A lot of their goals came through him as well. So I think that's going to be a massive out for them. But one player that certainly Italiano hopes is going to fill that goal scoring void is Afani Eze, who did score a double against the Mariners the other day. So certainly they'll be hoping that he continues his form there. A couple of wingers they brought in, Carlo Armiento and Nikola Miliuznic, and they've also brought in Manreka James, Dan Edwards, and then they picked up Rami Nazarene, who is a pretty decent pickup as well. They have lost a bit as well, though. When you look at Scott Wooten moving on, Sam Sutton, Costa Barbarouses, as I said, Stefan Kolakowski has also departed, as well as Francisco Giraldes and Dublin Boone. So, as you said, mate, they really had a rough time in terms of playing Auckland. They got hammered in the third derby, and they were on the wrong side of the result in the first two as well. So it's really set them back. And they were really in Auckland's shadow last season, unfortunately, after all that work that they've done to build up such a strong brand. Yeah, they fell away pretty quickly when everyone got really excited about Auckland FC.
Yeah, they did. Let's look at their pre-season. They did have an exciting win over Wrexham 1-0, but as soon as they moved to the Australia Cup, they struggled to get over Perth Glory in a penalty shootout. They just got over Nunawanning in a 1-0 win in the round of 16, but they got thumped by Heidelberg 4-0. They did have a friendly against Sydney FC that they lost 1-0 as well, and obviously played Central Coast, but not in the right circumstances. So I do find it hard to get excited about this side. I I just can't see where the wins are going to come from, and I think they will have a struggle. Although I think they'll be competitive, but what I've seen of them in the Hahn Cup, I just can't see them anywhere apart from the bottom two.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. Let's go to a bit of feedback from a Wellington fan. Thank you to L. Smith on X. So he's let us know that the players to watch this season, Luke Brooks-Smith, who is labelled as a very exciting talent, and Afinia Eze, who's the visa striker that they brought in with high expectations. He's a big, strong lad, Eze. So let's see how they utilise him this season. And then the hopes and fears, hope our academy boys can step up and we can play some exciting football, and the fear that our squad may be outmatched. So the prediction from L. Smith is that they'll finish 10th or 11th. Where have you got the knocker?
I've got them 10th. I totally agree. I think 10th or 11th is probably where they're going to sit. I just can't see where the wins are going to come from. I just can't. I look at their squad compared to the other A-League teams and I just don't see enough. I think Auckland's had a bigger impact on them than probably what we first thought. But I am confident in their consortium and their stability. I think they'll just build. I just think they're going to have to go back to basics and try to refresh there and strategically maybe target a few more players as they go along. But yeah, it doesn't look good for me this year if you're a Wellington fan. But stick on board because they've shown a model of consistency since they've been with us, and they're doing a good job. It's just they just lack the individual talent and the depth.
I've got them 11th, mate. And I think one of the keys, if they are going to have a good season, is the way they're going to start, because they've got a reasonably soft start in terms of Perth. I mean, they do have to travel to Perth. They then host Brisbane Roar. They then got the Mariners. So there's certainly 3 games where they could pick up some points. They've then got the big New Zealand derby. So if they don't pick up many points out of that one, they hopefully they're not going to come into that game with much confidence. They've then got MacArthur for their 5th game. So certainly their first 3 on paper, you'd think that they're a shot at getting a result out of, but then it's obviously going to get harder for them. So we'll see how that transpires for them throughout the season.
All right, let's look at the final team of the A-League preview, Western Sydney Wanderers. And last season, they finished 4th, knocked out by victory in round 1 of finals. And, they've lost some big players, but yes, they've put in some as well. But I'm a bit interested to see where Western Sydney Wanderers land this year. They have got some good players to watch, but Chief's got some news on their 3 strikers from last year, which will move over to him. But I just wanted to touch base before that. Their crowds are still strong, 9,809 average crowd. Western Sydney Wanderers always put on some good entertainment there, and they've got a strong training base for the Wanderers. Where do you think their ins and outs will be, and what's that important stat you've got regarding their 3 strikers?
Yeah, it's actually 4 when you look at their top scorers from last season. So Nicholas Milanovic had 12, Bosnidar Krajev had 8, Zach Sapsford had 8, and Marcus Antonsen had 7. So
35.
all 4 of those,
Oof.
all 4 of those players have left the club. They did score the most goals per match throughout last season, but obviously a lot of those key players have left. So big opportunity for Alan Sturgis to fill that void with some of the players that he's brought in, but some big responsibility on those players as well. I think for last season, Sturgis only had the 1-year deal. So I felt all through that last season that he didn't really get the opportunity to build a squad. He was more looking at results, making sure that he got that extension on his contract. But now I believe he's got a 2-year deal. So it gives him a bit more time to build a squad, build a philosophy, build a playing style. And I think they have lost some big players, as mentioned, particularly up front. But I think they've recruited reasonably well. And they've also recruited some players that do have potential, but haven't shown it a lot in some previous clubs. So we'll see how a few of them get on. Let's talk about the ins. Costa Barbarouses had some couple of fantastic seasons at Wellington Phoenix. We'll see if he can keep up his goal scoring exploits. Steven Ugarkovic, he returns to the club from Melbourne City, so he'll provide plenty of steel in that midfield. Philip Kanka also comes in. Alu Kuol is a big one who I'm sure they'll be hoping that has a good goal return, but wasn't that prolific in his time at the Mariners. So we'll be hoping that they can get him the right service. Ruan Tongi comes in at the back. And the last one is a massive one, Angus Thurgate. He really was the player that everyone was after once Western United were known to not be in the competition this season. So big signing, and I think I could see him and Ugarkovic probably in that midfield. They do, both of them offer plenty. So we'll see how Thurgate gets on in a different environment, but he's been very consistent across the A-League for many seasons now. Let's have a look at their outs. As I mentioned, a few of them already, but Milanovic has gone to Aberdeen. Marcus Antonsen has already left. Jack Clisby, the left back, departs. Dean Belcanos is out. Jonte Wook, who was their central defender, came in with a lot of hype, but probably didn't live up to that expectation. Sega Harper also goes out. Zach Sapsford has gone to Dundee United. Alex Battleado barely played, but we're hoping he gets a lot more luck at the Newcastle Jets. Marcus Eunice, he was on loan last season anyway, came back briefly for the preseason, but has now gone to Brøndby. Oscar Priestman is a big miss, I think, from their midfield. He's gone to Motherwell. And Juan Mata didn't really play much, to be really honest, so probably not the biggest out in Alan Sturgis's eyes anyway. And they've also made a couple of re-signings as well, but done a lot of business. But I think replacing those goals could be an issue for them this season.
Yeah, got some fringe Socceroos players in the past there. Borello, goes back, and Thomas. And then you talked about Angus Thurgate. What this could be his prime time years. 25 years of age, capped at junior level for Australia's under-20s. He did play 55 games for Western United, but prior to that, he was with the Jets for 116 games. So that's a lot of football for a 25-year-old, and I think he's primed for a big year. Look, if they didn't get him, I'd be seriously worried about Western Sydney Wanderers, and I don't know how high they can really go. I don't think they can reach the heights of last year, their fourth place. I think that's going to be a stretch. Considering those names that you read out, and they've made all good. A lot of them have made all good moves. Milanovic to Aberdeen, and we've seen him with, had a great start to the year. Padelado's on fire, and obviously, Priestman's massive loss. Marta, we know, has gone to victory. So it's how well they can replace them. They do look like they might be tough to break down. If I look at some of their matches that they played, I wasn't too impressed with them in the Hahn Cup either. Heidelberg smashed them 3-0. They had a friendly with Perseid before that, lost 1-0, and beat Peninsula Power up there 3-0. So there was nothing that in pre-season that jumped out at me, and I think they will be on the edge of the finals, just missing out.
Let's look at some of the players to watch. We mentioned Angus Thurgate, big in from Western United, and I think he's going to be very influential for them this season. Anthony Pantazopoulos just recently stated that he turned down some offers to move overseas, feeling that he hasn't done enough, which is very mature for a young player to say. So definitely he'll be looking for a great season this season, and hopefully for his sake, he gets that move in the off-season. Alu Kuol mentioned before, interesting one coming across from the Mariners. I think on his day he can be really good. He's definitely going to fit the mold of a worker for Alan Sturgis, so we'll see how that works out. Alex Bonatig, another one to keep an eye at, and Aiden Hammond, very promising young player as well. Their first 5 games, pretty tough start in my eyes. Melbourne City, then followed by Auckland, Macarthur, and then it gets a little bit easier playing Adelaide and the Mariners. But those first 3 straight out of the blocks, we'll see where the Wanderers are at that point.
Yep, I agree, and good luck to Western Sydney Wanderers fans. I've tipped them to come 7th. I reckon they'll just miss the finals. Chief, where have you got them this year?
I've got them 8th, but I wouldn't be shocked if they sneak into the final. I think it's, as you said before, it's going to be really tight around that mark. So I could see them going on a run and making finals, but I've got them 8th. All right, Mopper, that's our season preview. Now it's time to stick our neck out and pick out a couple of individual awards. and also a couple of team awards as well. So let's start with the Golden Boot winner. And I just want to read you out a stat before you give your prediction, because the top 5 goal scorers and 7 of the top 9 from last season have all moved overseas. So we talk about this being a selling league, and you can certainly see that that's the case with some of those top goal scorers. Obviously, Segacic and Hachiguren is probably the highest profile, but plenty of them have got their moves after outstanding seasons, throwing Noah Bodic into that list as well. But who do you think, Mopper, is going to get the Golden Boot this season?
To me, the signing of the season, Chief from Auckland FC, Lachlan Brook, can play across the front line anywhere. He's under 23 Australian international. He's had some good experiences at other clubs and tested himself out overseas as well. And I just think with Auckland's team and possession and style, and obviously them winning the league last year, losing in the semi-finals, he to me is such a great signing, X factor up front. I reckon you'll see goals aplenty. He is my Golden Boot winner, and I think he'll do it convincingly.
All right. My prediction is Max Caputo of Melbourne City. I think that he is going to have a breakout season this season. He, of course, had that injury, which meant that he didn't start the season last year. But when he did come in, he looked dangerous at the Under-20 World Cup, scored those couple of goals against Cuba. So I think he's going to come into this season with plenty of confidence. And I think he's going to get a lot of good service from those youngsters around him as well. So with Melbourne City, with me expecting them to have a good season, I think Max Caputo is going to take out the Golden Boot for this season. Let's move on to the Johnny Warren medalist, obviously the player of the season. Who you got, Mupper?
I have got the Paris-born 26-year-old Australian Dennis Giroux. I think this is a huge signing from Victory, and the Aussie capped 6 times at senior level, 8 times at junior level, has been with Deportivo La Coruña, has been over at Toulouse, he's been over as well. He's played with Melbourne City before, but now is with Victory. He's in his prime of his career, and I reckon he's come back and will absolutely have a great season attacking midfield in that Melbourne Victory front line. The creator, the attacker, I think he's in for a big season. So great to have him back, and I think it's a fantastic signing for the Victory. A real statement signing from the Aussie fringe player, capped 6 times.
I am going for Maxi Burgess. I'm going to go for a complete redemption arc for Max Burgess after being frozen out at Sydney FC. He's got his move to the Newcastle Jets. He's won the Australia Cup, and now he's going to take out an individual honour by winning the Johnny Warren medalist. I think he could be so influential in that Newcastle Jets side, get the right players around him, and he's going to be a creator. He's going to be a goal scorer. I think he's going to have an absolutely massive season. So Maxi Burgess, for me, for the player of the season, the Johnny Warren medalist. What about your wooden spoon, mate? Who's going to finish last this season?
I'm sorry, Mariners fans, but I think you're in for a very tough year. It started poorly, and I think it's going to take a lot to try to rebuild this club to get it back to where it was. They've been in this situation before, so I'm confident they'll get out of it. I'm hoping their academy will shine, and you'll see a few senior players like Redmayne and Trent Sainsbury make them competitive. But I'm sorry to say that Mariners squad is probably just doesn't have the depth, and they've lost a lot of players, and it's not looking good up there.
I'm sorry to say that I agree with you, and I think the Central Coast Mariners will also finish last this season. I hope that I'm proven wrong. I did say in my preview of the Mariners that I actually didn't have them last until Mark Jackson departed the club. I thought he might be able to galvanise that young, inexperienced squad a little bit, but I think with the departure of Mark Jackson, I think that's a step too far for them now. So I really hope that they are at least competitive on the field. But yeah, I don't see a lot of points being picked up by the Mariners throughout this season. All right, let's turn to the Premiers, Mopper. Who's going to finish the league on top?
Oh, look, I've just gone straight to the club that's doing everything right. The ownership's right. The crowds are right. the squad is right, the coach is right, Auckland FC, I think they'll dominate. I think they'll be extremely hard to beat this year. And I just think they'll go straight to the top and they'll be hard to catch. They've just got too many good factors on and off the field. And it's a real moving club. And I hope they find that pyramid at the end to push this club even further, because the structures that they've put in place since they come in last year has been top class. The community engagement, the fan base, it's just an unbelievable, great story for the A-League that Auckland have got this side going the way they are. And just with the mentorship from Steve Corica and the experience, they'll be very hungry with that finals loss that Victory knocked them out of. And I can't wait to see this first game on Saturday, Melbourne Victory in Auckland. But they're just an outstanding squad and just have so much more depth than everyone else.
It's going to be a bit boring, but I agree with you, Mopper. I think Auckland will also win the league. I don't think they'll find it as easy as they did last season. I think a few clubs will be a bit more on notice with Auckland, but I do think that they've only strengthened their squad, and I think with the experience that they've gained from last season, that they'll be able to top the league again. I think Gerb Wright coming in is a good solid signing for them. And then you mentioned Lockie Brook as well. I think he's going to add plenty of flair up front, and they're going to be solid again as they were last season. Hiroki Sakai at the back as well, plenty of leadership. Probably the question mark might be their keeper. They had Alex Paulson there last season, who was fantastic. So that's probably the only vulnerability I can see with Auckland this season. All right, Mopper, so who's going to win the grand final for you?
Auckland will do the double. I've got no doubt. They'll just, if they can have that home final and Auckland at home, I just think they'll be unstoppable. And the hunger from last year's final loss will only drive them.
Are you ready for my prediction?
Fire away, my friend.
I am going to go for Sydney FC. I think they will have a slow start to the season, but I think they're going to build during the season. I mentioned in their preview that I like them without the star-studded lineup, and I think combination of some solid players mixed in with their exciting young academy, I think that they're going to make the finals, but then I think they're going to go on a bit of a run as their momentum builds into that finals campaign, and they are going to win the A-League Championship.
There's nothing like being bold, my friend, and I wish you all the best in your prediction. I can't see that happening, but I'm sure the Sydney FC fans will be excited by your optimism.
Well, let's wait and see. Who knows? We might know nothing of what we're talking about, but we're definitely looking forward to the A-League men's season, which kicks off this Friday with a huge clash between the champions Sydney FC and Adelaide United, the champions incoming, I should say. And let's look forward to a fantastic season. Let's hope there's some great crowds. There's plenty of excitement around the league because it's an exciting time for Australian football, and let's hope the A-League's competition can add to that.
Yeah, look, I think there's been a huge positive uplift, and domestically, I think it'll have that flow-on effect. You've seen the Socceroos and the Matildas do great internationally. You've seen a lot of youth teams this year have a lot of success, which no doubt have come from our domestic game, which we've seen with transfers and a lot of these players under 20s in the A-League. So I think you'll see some more exciting stars. You've got the Hahn Cup that was exciting, and the Australian Championship that have just brought more interest to the game. So we've seen 1.453 million there last year, and I'm expecting big things again from Auckland, who I said are top. Sydney FC might suffer a little bit with those crowds at the start, but I think Victory and I think Newcastle fans will be very excited. A lot of clubs will be very competitive this year, and I reckon this will be right down to the wire, which will keep all the clubs involved and all the fans out there supporting their team right to the end.
Yeah, completely agree, mate. I'm pumped up for the season. I know plenty of A-League fans are as well. We wish all the teams all the best, and we hope that your team does everything that you want them to do, and you'll have a fantastic season.